Let's fly through this episode this week, gents, and let's get started on the first big topic this week, which is that the USMNT roster has been confirmed for the World Cup. Greg Berhalter has announced the 26 players he is taking to Qatar. Initial thoughts, Nick Mendola, I'm going to come to you. We probably knew the starting lineup, but then outside of that, there was a lot of issues around fitness, around form. And there were a few surprises on this roster as well, weren't there? So what are your initial thoughts on the roster that the USA is taking to the World Cup? Their first World Cup, by the way, in 8 years, which we're all very excited about here at PST.
Well, when Greg Berhalter was hired as the men's national team coach, I think the number one thing you thought is, well, Zach Steffen and Will Trapp, maybe Giassi Zardes will all be on the next World Cup squad. And so I think we knew a long time ago that it wouldn't be Trapp, and an even longer time it was going to be Zardes. But I guess I would have never seen Zach Steffen not on that list. And there are other names on there that I'm a little bit surprised about, but ultimately my thoughts on the whole are it could have been worse. Given the way that it seemed like Berhalter was evaluating players, it could have been worse. Excited to see Tim Ream on, but again, really, really surprised to not see Zach Steffen.
I agree with you. That was the big shock, wasn't it, Andy? I think obviously he's been told you're not going to be number one because Matt Turner is clearly the undisputed number one now. So maybe that was part of the conversation. He's not just going to go to the World Cup to be a backup, but his form in the last few US outings hasn't been great, Zach Steffen, and he's been up and down injury-wise for Middlesbrough since he went there on loan, but he's played a lot recently. It's not like he's not playing. He's fit. He's playing okay by all accounts. So a bit of a surprise there. But elsewhere, defensively, are we happy with – obviously, we're very happy that Tim Ream has come in. We've been fully on board the Tim Ream bandwagon the last – few weeks, and rightly so. He's been really good in the Premier League for Fulham this season. But when we look at the other cover, especially defensively on the fullback position, Shaq Moore getting a surprise call-up. Joe Scally, talented young player, but he's a bit of a surprise as well. What do we think defensively, and what are the big surprises and takeaways for you?
Yeah, very quickly on Zach Steffen. I know he's playing a lot this season. He has not played a lot for about 3 years. And I think this is probably, like at that age, that's a lot of development, especially for a goalkeeper playing regularly in first team. Like, I think we maybe glossed over the last couple of years. Hey, this guy that we want to be the number one at the World Cup, he's just not going to play. And then World Cup year, okay, he's going to play a ton, and we're going to simply expect him to pick up right. I think maybe that was a little bit naive from us. And now it makes me look into the future with Matt Turner and the situation that he's in at Arsenal and wonder, all right, well, we'll worry about that in the future. On the defense, because that's what you asked about, Joe. Obviously, very, very good to see Tim Ream there. You need that leadership. You need a veteran. You need somebody that can bring the group together, I think. And I think everybody, whether he's best friends with everybody on the squad, Tim Ream is going to be someone that has and commands everybody's respect in that locker room every single time he walks in, because he's been in England for a decade almost now, or if not a full decade at this point. He has done it at some very, very high levels. He has proven himself over and over again at a couple of different clubs in England, at a couple of different times at Fulham, that he has been a starter, regular, full-time player, out of the team, back into the team, in the Premier League, captain of Fulham at the likes. It would have been, I don't have a word for what it would have been if Greg Berhalter had not taken Tim Ream to this World Cup. And so whether he starts, whether he's a leader, whether he's off the bench, whether he's a back, it almost doesn't matter to me. Just the fact that he's there. I think he starts though. I hope he starts. I will say I hope he starts, because he is that left-footed guy next to Walker Zimmerman there on the right.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think maybe he would have been in anyway, but with Chris Richards' injury, that was obviously very unfortunate. And Miles Robinson as well. There was obviously a real lack of depth in that position. We've talked about Aaron Long's struggles, especially in the games against Japan and Saudi Arabia we just saw in the last bunch of friendlies. Then that partnership with Walker Zimmerman doesn't seem to be the one, right, Nick? So Tim Ream has to be starting alongside Zimmerman for his experience. It's been brilliant for Fulham. I mean, he's so good on the ball, captain Fulham. And again, we talked about it before, his partnership with Anthony Robinson, who's going to be starting left back. And there is no real other option apart from Sergino Dest, who is carrying a knock as well, switching over to left fullback. So, Nick, when I think about defensively, are you happy with that kind of core there? Is there anything else they could have done? I mean, Carter Vickers is the only other guy, right? You could have a good argument to try and start alongside Zimmerman at centre back.
Yeah, and again, to have the experience of especially going up against Wales and going up against England, these are guys largely that he's been meeting for the last, as Andy said, decade or around a decade. I look at Berhalter was put in a tricky position when Miles Robinson was hurt. I think we all agree that he was coming along in a really strong fashion to play. And you look at Chris Richards being unavailable to go. We can go through. He has, whatever you want to say, he has tried a lot of center backs. There are some, infuriatingly so, at least in my case, as you know, I've pointed out with Long. There are some who've gotten way too long a leash, pun intended. But, I mean, we saw that there was a period of time where Mark McKenzie was the guy who kept being put out there. We've seen Eric Palmer-Brown called in certain windows. We've seen Richards, obviously, Miles Robinson. And surely there will be more. I don't know that this position is anything other than settled, especially now that as we look to Zimmerman, who's 29, and Ream, who's 35. And even if it was Long, who's 30, you're probably looking at this is the window for these guys to play.
Definitely. And I think the way that Greg Berhalter has been sort of talking about Tim Ream's form and how well he's playing and how glowing he's been about that, he's definitely going to start, I think, alongside Zimmerman. And if Sergiño Dest is fit, he'll start right back. Anthony Robertson starts left back. Turner in goal. There you go, sorted. We've already sorted out Greg Berhalter's opening defence and goalkeeper situation. Midfield looks pretty settled as well. So Yunus Musa, McKennie, Adams, they're nailed-on starters in that position. And then the other guys, Kellen Acosta, Luca de la Torre, shaken off that hamstring issue. And I guess Roldan was the surprise inclusion, should we say that? He's a good squad player. And then Aronson's listed as a midfielder as well, but maybe that's because he can play slightly deeper if needed in that Yunus Musa kind of combining role. But midfield's pretty set. That's the strongest part of this US squad. Is that correct, Andy?
I don't know if strongest is the word that I guess it is by default because we have so many questions at other positions, but I also have questions about not the quality or the names or anything in that midfield group, but the way that they kind of fit together and play together. I know, Adams and McKennie and Musa is the trio that we look at and say, well, those are the three best. Let's put them out there. But Tyler Adams as a single pivot, not great. Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie as a double pivot together, also not great. Luca de la Torre getting back from that injury and getting into this squad, I think could be very, very key for this team. I don't know if it'll be from the start of a game. I don't know if it'll be against England or if it might be the game against Wales because you're going to expect to have so much possession, but you're going to at some point in this tournament have, maybe it's 15 or 20 minutes, but there will be at least a spell, if not an entire game, where the onus to drive possession and take the game to the other team and create scoring chances is on you. And I think they'll need a player like Luca de la Torre in the midfield that can set up those passes. You give Tyler Adams a little bit more freedom. You let him press higher up the field. You win the ball back in better areas of the field. So it's just kind of a knock-on effect with having such a pure passer there at that number 6 position. Very similar. It's a lot of mentions for Will Trapp in this episode this week for a guy who's not going to the World Cup, but very similar to the way that Will Trapp operated under Greg Berhalter at Columbus Crew back in the day, which is how Greg Berhalter got this job. It was very, very effective. It looked very similar to the way I think this team is probably going to play at the World Cup. So I am excited for the midfield. I'm excited that all of those players right now, and I am knocking on wood, are healthy going into the World Cup, because that was the number one fear, is we wouldn't have one of those stars, especially in midfield. You know, we can say Pulisic or Aronson, but the midfield, if we don't have that group in there, then I think a lot of things fall apart for this team.
Oh, yeah. Adams, McKennie, Musa, so key to the way this entire team operates. It is interesting, though, with Aronson. I do think the way to get him into the team, when we're going to talk about these forwards now, but he may be the guy that's the most flexible tactically and could play slightly deeper out of all the players. I mean, Nick, let's talk about the forwards. Obviously, Jesus Ferreira made it, Christian Pulisic, Gio Reyna, Tim Weah, and then the other surprises were Josh Sargent, Haji Wright, and Jordan Morris making it. But when we talk about the makeup of the strikers there, I mean, it seems like Ferreira's got the number 9 jersey right now, Pulisic, Weah, Gio Reyna underneath it. It's really difficult to figure out how they're actually going to line up, because there's a lot of very similar players who are in very similar form. But then, yeah, how do you wedge all of these great attacking players in the team at the same time? That's going to be difficult.
It is. For me, it's easy. It's Tim Way at center forward. I put Aronson and Pulisic on either side of him, and I say, have fun with this. I mean, Gio Reyna can be in there as well. I think the fun part here is Reyna, Aronson, and Pulisic. These guys are multi-dimensional, and we know that Pulisic likes to come from one side. Mm-hmm. But I think this is going to be the tournament where, regardless of whether not regardless, but how they perform matters, but I think you're going to see all three of those guys' stars rise at this tournament. Reyna is a fantastic player. Aronson's star has risen a bit as an all-action guy in the Premier League. But this is going to be all about Christian Pulisic. And I think we've forgotten, maybe it's familiarity bias. It really could be. This is a special attacker. It's a special attacker when the focus is on him. We haven't seen that in Chelsea in a long time. We never really saw it at Dortmund either because he was so young. When this guy is the focus of what you'll realize it's going to be Jack Grealish-esque when he's getting fouled 6-7 times a game. Other teams will have identified Christian Pulisic as just don't let that guy beat them. And I'm telling you, whether it's Iran or Wales or maybe even England, he's going to beat somebody at this tournament. I'm confident of that. We've been critical of him at times, and rightly so. There are some attitude things to worry about, how he's handled his affairs, I'm sure. But as a talent, he's electric. And let's not forget how good he is.
And also, if other teams' defenders are so focused on him, that opens up opportunities for Reyna, Aronson, Weah, others to really make the most of that. Let's talk about the biggest omissions and sort of surprises in this squad. Then we talked about Tim Ream earlier, perhaps being a bit of a surprise, but deserved one. Joe Scally, maybe a lot of people wouldn't have thought he would get in, but did okay in the friendlies recently and playing week in, week out for Mönchengladbach and still very, very young and versatile too. So when we look at sort of up top, I think that's the biggest surprises, right? The fact that Jordan Morris and Haji Wright both got in over the likes of Ricardo Pepi, Jordan Pefok, Andy. Those are sort of that was the big debate. And when all's said and done, it might not matter too much because maybe talk about players who might be coming off the bench or be bit part players. But were those kind of the biggest surprises that Greg Berhalter made in roster? And what do you think he was thinking of when those big calls?
Yeah, I think they were. And I don't know. I think a lot of people are kind of making a lot more out of it than probably it's worth at this point. We're talking about what roster spots, 22, 23, 24, 25. In the 2014 World Cup with a 23-man roster, Mix Diskerud went to the World Cup, didn't play a single minute. So it's quite likely that there will be, I don't know, 5, 6 maybe players that just won't play at this World Cup, depending, one, obviously on how long they're in the tournament, but two, how Berhalter is going to manage the team. And so I think Haji Wright does bring a nice physical presence at center forward, whether it was going to be him or Jordan Pefok. It's not worth getting upset for. I think that it's Haji Wright and not Jordan Pefok, just as it wouldn't have been worth getting upset for the other way around. I like what Jordan Morris brings is kind of a very direct hybrid forward kind of type player who's going to get on the ball, who's going to dribble, who's going to run at defenders and put defenders under pressure. And I think that's one thing that's kind of missing in this team just a little bit. All of those really, really solid attacking players that you were talking about, Nick, they're all really good on the ball. They're all really good combining. They're all good in tight space, but not a lot of guys that want to just run at defenders. And that just opens up so many other things for the other guys there on the team. And so I imagine Morris is probably a 10 or 15 minute substitute coming off the bench when the U.S. is chasing a game and needs a goal, or if it's level and they're trying to finish it before they have to go to extra time. So like as Berhalter kind of navigates this tournament and manages situations at 5-minute increments, 10-minute increments, 15-minute increments in some of these games, I do think he's got a lot of nice different tools to one another that he can change the game and affect it. Now, will they be the right player? Will it be the right decision? Who knows? We will find out obviously when the games start, but at least he's got an entire set of tools to work with, I feel like.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you mentioned it there about the combination of those players underneath whoever's starting up top. That's what I'm most excited about with this US team is the fact that Christian Pulisic cutting off the left can now link up with Reyna or Aronson. And they haven't really had that throughout qualifying through injuries or lack of form or just the situation just hasn't really called for it. But you're right. They're going to create a lot of chances. Who's there to finish it off? And I still have issues around that. Is Josh Sargent Haji Wright, is Ferreira. Are they really guys who are going to finish off these chances that are going to be created for them? Or is it going to be down to the likes of Weyer, Pulisic, Aronson to just take the ball by the horn and say, I'm going to go and just finish it myself? And I feel like the best case scenario might be the latter for the US if they're going to go far in this World Cup. Nick, when we talk about the squad and the expectations overall, I mean, this is the second youngest roster the US has ever taken to a World Cup, with the average age of 25 years, just over. 1990 was the youngest ever World Cup roster that the US took with the average age. So it's still very young. It'll be one of the youngest, if not the youngest, at this tournament. What are the expectations for you? Because I know we've been going back and forth with our picks and predictions, which we will reveal on Pro Soccer Talk before the big tournament kicks off. But is there less or more pressure after this roster reveal on the US national team?
Oh, on the team itself, geez, it's hard to ever think about the pressure getting higher or lower at a World Cup. But I understand that the essence of your question. And I don't know. I think the pressure is only really on a couple people. And I know that sounds goofy, but the focus is going to be on Greg Berhalter. The focus is going to be on Christian Pulisic. I really think it starts to go down from there, and Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams and all that. But it's the star of the team and the coach. And they have to get out of it. If they're really, and I don't even know, I mean, does Greg Berhalter want to be the coach for another 4 years? Maybe he's had enough of it. But if they really want to be a part of the squad moving forward to the program, looking at a home World Cup and being the coach of that team, you better get out of the group. I think the group, I know, Joe, you and I have different opinions on Wales. I don't think they stink. I just think the U.S. has more talent than Wales, and I think they'll be able to get through that obstacle, or they should be able to get through that obstacle. There are World Cup draws that are going to be a lot harsher on the U.S. than this one. And I think if they don't get out of this group, the expectation has to be get out of the group, especially since they don't play England first, especially since they will know what they need for it. And not know what they need, but they'll know what they want from that England game and how they want to set up tactically based on how they do in their first game.
Andy, I think it's really interesting, sort of the makeup of this US squad. 9 players from MLS, 8 play in England, and you have a couple each from Italy, Germany, and Spain, and then 1 each from France, Scotland, Turkey. So a real mixture of where they're playing their club football. But there is a real MLS focus and an England focus where a lot of these players will, like Nick mentioned, come up against guys from Wales and England a lot already in their young careers. And then you have, MLS known for physicality and being aggressive, and a lot of the defensive players coming for it. Does that tell you anything about how Greg Berhalter is approaching this? And for you, what is your expectations from this US roster now we know the 26 players who are going to Qatar?
Yeah, I think the US probably has maybe slightly more talent than Wales, but I think Wales has a much better plan and a much better setup and a much better idea of who they are and just how they want to play. And I think that's at a World Cup in any tournament. And we've seen it from Wales in the Euros. Was it 2016 or was it 2020? At this point, they all run together.
Yeah.
But into the
2016 they went, and then they were in 2020 as well. So
yeah.
Big tournament experience for Wales.
And it's a team that's been together for a really long time. And I know that's kind of the same for the US, but they've done it in the Nations League, in the Gold Cup, in World Cup qualifying against CONCACAF level competition, whereas Wales have been doing it in multiple European championships. World Cup qualifying in Europe is a beast, and there's a reason that they've not gotten into the World Cup for a while. And so I look at the way they're tested, and to me, that's the team that I'm looking at and saying, is it going to be one of these two getting out of the group with England? Because we all know England's going to go on and win the World Cup. So they have to get out of the group. Sorry, Joe. No, I know. But that's the fact that it is that first game. It's the second day of the tournament as well. Yeah. I think it favors Wales, honestly. The more I'm thinking about it as I'm talking is the U.S. is going to need a little bit of time to grow into this tournament, I think, because they've never been in a major tournament like this. And so that first game, and maybe it's just the first 15 or 20 minutes, they might start a little bit slow. And I think Wales is the type of team to take advantage of that. So to me, it is very, very 50-50. It's a toss-up whether the U.S. or Wales gets out of this group.
I agree with you 100%. And only one US player has ever been to a World Cup before, DeAndre Yedlin. So it shows you the experience or lack of that the US has. But that could be a good thing as well. A lot of excitement around this young squad. But again, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Wales, this team, England, a lot of experience in these big tournaments and situations. And the US just haven't had a lot of experience against teams from outside the CONCACAF region over the last few years leading up to this World Cup. So that's the one thing in the back of my mind I was still a bit concerned about. But we're about to find out. So we know the squad, Greg Berhalter and his boys, are going to be going to Qatar soon. And at Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com, we'll keep you updated with all the latest news from around the World Cup, but with a big focus on the USMNT. Now we know the Stars and Stripes, who will be wearing that badge proudly in Qatar. And it's go time for the US almost as we tick down to the opening game against Wales.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. For even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock and be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend on USA Network and on Peacock. We will see you over there.